Today we're going to deal with the dreaded security system on the Lamborghini Murcielago. Hello and welcome to the shop. It's been a few years since we've done a video and a lot has changed since then. The biggest change is that we got a new workplace. Over the last couple of years, we were able to build out a real dream space, which includes this really cool wash bay with an in-ground lift that helps us pick up a car and allows us to wash the underside of it while doing service work. Hopefully this new space will give us the incentive to go ahead and make more content to help fellow enthusiasts. While the new shop is a dream come true, the alarm system on a Lamborghini Murcielago can be an absolute nightmare. Today we're going to go over all the bits and pieces of the alarm system and how to sequentially disable parts of it. I'm going to separate everything into timestamps so that you can either watch the whole video or go to various sections. So let's start off by talking about the alarm system and its function. Owners are familiar with this set of keys and remote control assembly. This is the way it is on the earlier cars. And on the later cars, it's a one-piece key that looks similar to what you would find on an Audi or Volkswagen from the early 2000s. Either way, the alarm system is about the same, and we're going to go over some of the details of it, how it works, and how to disable sections of the alarm. Let's talk about how the alarm system works on these cars. When you walk up to a Lamborghini Murcielago and you press the button on your key fob, it will either lock or unlock the car. And of course, it will either arm or disarm the alarm system. An armed alarm system does a number of things. It will put a cutoff to the starter so that you can't crank and turn the engine over. There are two fuel solenoids, essentially cutoff solenoids, that cut off fuel to the two fuel filters in the engine compartment. And there's also a siren that will go off if somebody tries to open a door. Now, anyone who's had one of these cars knows that the system can be incredibly finicky, and we're going to come to learn that it is a system that is slowly dying as you own your car. The first and most serious cause of problems are the fuel solenoids. Now, the fuel solenoids are just underneath this panel on the passenger side of the car. We're going to go into detail into removing them. But once you remove the side panel, the air box, and the coolant bottle on that side, you'll be able to clearly see the fuel filters. And we're going to get into the process of the removal of the fuel solenoids. Now, the solenoids have the possibility of failing, and they do actually fail quite often. And because they receive a coded signal from the alarm, if they don't receive that coded signal, they are always in the closed position. And there is no way to bypass them, no way of putting power to them. So you really want to remove them to remove a potential failure point. It's very easy, and with the right parts, it costs under $20 to do the job. So here we are in the engine compartment with everything taken out, and I'll just work my way in just so we can have a look at what it is we're trying to get out here. Bear with me, I'm just on a cell phone trying to do my best here. So here are the two fuel filters, and these are the two fuel solenoids that we're looking to take out. So in order to get to that, we of course have to take out the side carbon panel, the air box, the coolant bottle has to come out as well. And just scrolling back just so you get a bit of feel for what needs to come out. But with those items out, we can now go and tackle the removal of the fuel solenoids. So here I've put a light in here so we can look a little bit better. And as you can see, there are the two fuel filters and the fuel solenoids. So one of the first things that we want to do is we want to disconnect the electrical connectors that go to the fuel solenoids. Those won't get used anymore in the future. And what we're aiming to do is we're aiming to separate this connection here from the fuel filter assembly. Now there are, in fact, two connections. Because this is a solenoid, it's essentially a little door that opens and closes the pathway to the fuel comes in through here, passes through the doorway, if you will, and then passes into the inlet of the fuel filter. And so there's two different fasteners to disconnect in order to achieve that. So the first thing that we'll want to do is we'll want to, after disconnecting the wires, disconnect, there'll be a bolt right back here. Can't make it out, but there's be a bolt right back there that goes all the way through the assembly and connects to the fuel filter. Now, we're dealing with a system here that's full of fuel, and definitely there will be some spillage. So a few best safety practices. First of all, we've already disconnected the battery. We want to make sure that we have a fire extinguisher nearby, just in case of a flash of some kind. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stuff underneath here a towel that's been pre-soaked with water, nice and wet. So if there's any fuel, it gets quickly diluted and the chance of it igniting goes down significantly. So let's move over to that stage now. Here we are with the first fuel filter removed. I found it much easier to remove both sides because it's going to be necessary to flop this around. And here's where the real problem comes in doing this job. Removing this side is not too bad. Again, this is the wet towel that I laid down. This is all nice and wet with water, and it absorbs any fuel, dilutes it nicely, and reduces the chance of fire. But here's where the problem is. Here's the feed line, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to disconnect right over there, that connector. Now, someone in their infinite wisdom thought that it was necessary to make this theft-proof. So turn this upside down. You'll be able to see that there's a tamper-resistant screw right there. It's essentially a flathead screw that's designed to only be able to tighten. If you look at it closely, you can see it's only designed to tighten, but if you try to loosen, the flathead screwdriver will just skip off of those angled edges of the screw head. So a lot of people have different techniques as how to remove these. There's no real exact puller for it, but what most people tend to do is they tend to carefully drill into the top of that screw and use a screw extractor to put it into the hole of the screw and then take it out. It's probably the trickiest part of the job. I'm going to see what's involved and I'll talk about it after the fact. But as you can see, what happens is that screw goes through and presses against one of the flats of that nut and prevents it from coming out. Remember, there's fuel in the area here, even absorbed with water, so you want to try to avoid anything that can make sparks. But a little bit of force is going to be required to get these tamper-resistant screws out. So I'm going to get to it right now. So this went a little easier than expected. And over here, what I did, you can just see that I drilled into the top of the screw and used a screw extractor to be able to back the screw out. And now this fitting is loose and will allow me to come in with a wrench right here and remove the fuel solenoid. Again, pardon for the shaky holding of the camera. I'm doing this one-handed here, but as you can see now, this is nice and loose. No longer is this screw pushing against one of the flats of the fuel solenoid, so I can now put a wrench on it, pull the assembly out. Here are the fuel parts out of the car, and I've also brought the MED controller here just so we can get a feel for how the entire system works. So when you press the button, the MED controller sends a coded signal over to this fuel solenoid. This fuel solenoid then opens up and allows a passage of fuel from the inlet, which is right over here, through a little passageway, and then over to the filter. You cannot put power to this or do anything that lets it stay open all the time. It is a coded signal, and without the coded signal, the fuel solenoid will stay shut. These are also a failure point and a bit of a problem on these cars. The earlier Diablos didn't use these, but when they went to the later Diablos and Murcielagos and they added this alarm system, this became part of the alarm system. This is all really outdated stuff and should be replaced. So we saw earlier that we have, and here's a closer look at it, little security piece here where there is a screw that screws through, and that screw pushes against one of the flats of the hose that connects to this fitting. So we drilled that out, used an extractor, pulled it out. It's not very tight, but it does need an extractor to get it out. So that's gone now. So now what we need to do is we need a way of connecting between the existing fuel line that goes in and the fuel filter now that we have removed this solenoid. Now, Lamborghini makes a part for this, and it looks just like this. It's essentially an adapter that goes between the fuel filter. Now, we need to remember there has to be a crush washer that goes here, but it's an adapter that goes, that's the side that goes in the fuel filter, and this connects to the fuel line. Now, Lamborghini makes a part from the Lamborghini Diablo that can be used in this application, but they cost around $100. Actually, in Canada, when I looked it up, it was $140 a piece. And the one that you're looking at here is a factory Porsche part. Ordered this from the dealership. There's the part number, and cost me $8 from the Porsche dealer. Couldn't believe I could buy an $8 part from a Porsche dealer, but nice steel. I trust this implicitly, and it is exactly of the same construction of what's on the other side. Solid steel with a yellow zinc coating on it. So what we're going to do is we will connect this fitting, screw it on using a crush washer, and then reinstall the filter assembly. And now, whether or not you choose to use the MED system in the car, it will ignore the signal because there is no fuel solenoid anymore. And from a reliability standpoint, this is certainly something you'd want to do to your Lamborghini. Here we are with everything back together. Fuel filters are in place, new connections on the backside. And one of the things you'll want to do before you go any further is to put power back to the car, turn the key into the contact position, and what it'll do is it'll prime the fuel system, putting pressure through the fuel filters, and you can just check your connections to make sure that they don't leak. I already did this. When the fuel pressure comes up, you'll actually see the hoses move a little bit so you know the fuel's actually flowing through them. And no leaks, looking good, and ready to button up the rest of the car. Also, the connections that used to go to the fuel solenoids, they can just be zip tied out of the way. They don't need to be used anymore. And lastly, I probably haven't mentioned it yet, but of course, now is a good time to change your fuel filters if you don't have records of when they were done. Mine were done not that long ago, so I put them back in, but if not, great time to do fuel filters. And in the description, I'll put part numbers for fuel filters. They're less expensive than the ones from Lamborghini, but fit perfectly well. With the fuel cutoff solenoids removed, we can now turn our attention to the main brain of the alarm system. Inside the passenger side of the car, you open up the door. We're gonna come in here, and I've already removed it so we can have a look. So right next to the interior here, there's a leather trim panel. And that trim panel is only held in place by 3 plastic clips. Just give it a pull and it comes out. And when you root around in here, you're gonna look for a box that looks like this. This is the main brain of the alarm system. And again, it's made by a company called MED. It's an Italian company that went out of business about 10 years ago. It's impossible to get parts. This is a sealed unit, and by and large, you really can't do anything with it unless you're a bit of an electronics whiz. But that will be contained in this area in there. It's not actually screwed in. And all you have to do is disconnect the wires that go to it, and you're going to be left with this connection right over here. Now, the fuel cutoffs have been dealt with, but the other thing we have to deal with is the starter. So what we're going to do is we want to bridge this pin and that pin. The last one's on the end, which are pins 18 and 8. Now, on the screen, what I'll do now is I'm going to put a pin out that shows what all these wires do, so you can pause on it and reference them. But by bridging this one and this one, what it'll do is it'll allow the starter to operate and not be interrupted. Now, you can do this by doing something as simple as putting a small bent paper clip, which incidentally fits beautifully in here, and taping the whole thing up shut. Or if you want to get a little bit more fancy, this connector is available from places like Amazon. And what I'll do is on the screen right now, I'll put a screenshot of the exact part number of it. And you can buy these connectors and you can make yourself your very own jumper lead. And that's what I ended up doing. I ended up getting one of these connectors over here. And all I did was put a connecting wire between one and the other. And it allows me to jump this lead with a nice clean factory-like harness. And I chose purple because it's my daughter's favorite color. But all I have to do is come in here and plug this guy in. Working one-handed here, so bear with me. And as soon as this snaps together, that is everything that is required in order to start the car and operate it without this alarm system involved. Still in the passenger compartment, let's talk about the various levels of deactivation that we can have for the alarm system. Now, first and foremost, you want to remove the fuel solenoids. They are a problem waiting to happen, and you can just put them in a box and save them for the next owner if they want to reinstall them. Take them out. It is good insurance to not ever have a problem at the side of the road. Beyond that, everything else to a certain degree is optional. What you can do is you can remove the fuel solenoids and you can continue to use the MED box plugged in and continue to use the lock and unlock function. What you need to bear in mind is that these electronics are powered all the time. And with the passage of time, what happens is there are capacitors on the inside that start to degrade, and the alarm system will actually start acting up a little bit and will slowly go dying away. In my case, this thing started to act up a little bit, and instead of dealing with a problem at the side of the road, I've just decided to remove it altogether. That said, there are stages to how much you might choose to disconnect things. So as we said, fuel solenoids first. The other thing that you can do is you can leave this box plugged in, and you can create a jumper lead between 18 and 8, and you can continue to use it that way, and that way you have no interruption on the starter. You'll still have the siren, you'll have the lock and unlock features. So that is another way of doing it. Another option is to just plug the whole thing back in, and if you ever had a problem at the side of the road and had an emergency, you could take this panel out, carry a paper clip with you, bridge those two, and then you pretty well have still an electrical cutoff to the starter. And in my particular case, what I've chosen to do is I've chosen to take everything out. I'm going to use this jumper lead, and it allows me to start and stop the car. And I've lost my functionality of keyless opening and closing of the car. But it's really quite simple, because all you have to do is plug your key in here on either side, turn it, and it will lock both doors. From the inside, the lock function still works. So that was a compromise that I was okay with. Again, there's a lot of choice that you have, and it's up to you to decide how far you want to take it. We wanted to give you the various options. I absolutely cannot take the credit for all of the information that is in this video. Two people really stand out that offered a lot of great info that I found online. One is Lambo Jesse on Instagram, and another one is Stimpy from Lamborghini Talk. Both of them gave a lot of the building blocks that got us to this point, and it's their sharing and knowledge that really helped this project along. So thanks a lot, guys. As a lot of you know, this is a non-monetized channel. I don't make a dime from it, and it's nice to hear from people around the world, especially if we were able to help them out. So please leave a comment, consider subscribing, and we'll see you in the next video.